Live.
Hello! I mean, ho ho! See what I did there? Hello and welcome to Datatopics Unplugged, casual, lighthearted, kind of weekly. Well, I guess we'll try weekly tentative, short discussion on what's new in data, from analytics engineering to AI translation to LLM models to a lot of stuff, basically, but anything goes. Today, we're also on YouTube. First time live streaming, actually.
Yes.
So if you cannot hear, if you are on YouTube, I know we had a few people waiting. If you cannot hear us, please let us know in the comments. But yeah, let's see what gives. And also, if you see us as well, you see we have some Christmas theme decorations, New Year's, I guess, for Bart. I think he's a bit ahead, but we'll get there. Today is the 22nd of December. My name is Murillo. I'm your host for today. I'm joined with my partner in crime, Bart.
Hi.
I'm joined with my other partner in crime that sometimes doesn't show up, but still I love him, Kevin.
Hi.
And I'm joined by Maryam. So I'll say a few words and then I'll give you the floor to you. Maryam's been working for 3 years as an analytics engineer. She likes to read. She likes to take up a good challenge. She's always curious. She has a few hobbies like sewing, drawing, traveling, and yoga. She enjoys going to restaurants, talking to friends, and having a drink, even though she refused today's drink. So cheers. Thanks. So maybe, Maryam, would you like to share a few words?
So it's my first time at the Datatopics. I'm very excited, also a bit stressed because it's also the first time that we're live streaming. So if there's something to mention, keep the comments nice, I would say. Yeah, I'm working with Kevin, so that's also here to see Kevin. It gives me a bit of ease.
Voilà.
Okay.
Nothing to worry about.
Yeah. I think it's funny because like we're live streaming, but before we weren't live streaming, but we never edited either.
It's true. But it
Right?
gives a different feeling.
It gives a different feeling,
Yeah.
right? Now it feels like it's like you're in a simulation airplane and now you're really flying, you know? It's kind of the same thing, but not really. But I digress.
Let's try not to mess up too much. Yeah. Let's try not to get cancelled. Let's take that as a threshold.
That's a big statement. But New Year's resolution, huh?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like 2024. You just don't want to be canceled. All right. So, Maryam, you mentioned you are an analytics engineer.
Yeah.
Maybe a curious term, like what is an analytics engineer?
So maybe starting with I'm working for 3 years, but I won't say that I started out as an analytics engineer. I started out as a data analyst who could work with Python, that's to say, or who knew what SQL was, but it's not that I initially said, okay, you know what, that's my goal or my role to play. So what is an analytics engineer? But I grew eventually into that role, and let me explain what I would do in my job. So what I'm doing at the moment is, so I'm working together with the business team who are having a bit of a data problem, pleased to say, overflooded by CSVs and stuff. So this is like a typical project that we step into. And I think our goal within the team is within that team is to make it a bit more efficient. So make them a bit more data literate, least to say. And to say, okay, CSVs and Excel is not a database. Yeah, that's a start.
yeah, I know it's well, some people may, but yeah, I know. I see Excel sheets and everything. It's everywhere. Huh? Maybe you mentioned also data analyst.
Yeah.
For people that are not familiar with the term, how would you describe a data analyst and analytics engineer, and maybe contrast the two, maybe?
Yeah. So say a data analyst would be, for instance, someone who is mainly focusing on the business and saying, okay, this is the insights that I want to get to from my data. In that case, I wouldn't say that data analysts would be, okay, they're so familiar on how to use the data and everything, but it's not that they have all the up-to-date knowledge on data modeling, all the best practices that are being produced or put in production by data engineers. So their goal as a data analyst would be, okay, how can I get my insights from data the most easiest possible way? While the analytics engineer, their goal is to provide those visualization, those insights as well, but more on a way that's they also respect the things that data engineers are putting in place. So for instance, the best practices, the documentation, or the versioning on Git and stuff. So it's like a bit managing what data engineers did, keep maintaining it throughout the data lifecycle, and still trying to provide an analytics ready data that data analysts could pick up and immediately start with their visualizations, because that's their goal. And this way they won't have to be worrying about, okay, am I using the right data, or am I doing everything that I should do when I'm using data? Because I think analytics engineer would take care of that.
Yeah, maybe when I think of analytics engineering, it's hard for me not to think of DBT engineer.
Yeah.
Is it the same thing? Is it the same thing today because DBT monopolizes the space, kinda?
Well, they popularized the term.
They
Definitely.
popularize the term.
That's
Yeah.
true. I'm happy that you said popularize, because it's not the first time that they used the analytics engineer term. Apparently, there was an article in 2019.
Okay.
I don't know the author, but he mentioned the term analytics engineer. So
Yeah,
although
okay.
everyone,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice. Sam de Bruin, so our colleague, he sent me the article. It's like we always reference both.
We
So
link
DBT,
it to DBT. Yeah.
yeah, but apparently that they indeed
Okay.
popularized it, but
Okay.
didn't created it. So that's a nice.
Because I think it does make a lot of sense. It's kind of the natural evolution. If first there was chaos, and then you started to have central data teams who were bringing a lot of data together to try and provide business with reports, and then they were still kind of pushing out those reports, so they were doing everything. And then you saw kind of a movement towards more self-service, but the self-service flavor we got then was basically you could slice and dice an existing report and you could do a bit more with it, but business was still limited to kind of slicing and dicing an existing report. And then the next evolution was, how can we decentralize even more, because business wanted more and wanted it faster. And as a central data team, you have the challenge, you have marketing asking you for something and finance asking you for something, and they're all pulling your sleeve, and who do you prioritize? So giving them the reins allows them to get there faster, and so that you can kind of, every unit can prioritize for themselves. But then the risk arises if they can do more than just slicing and dicing a report or even building a report. How do you make sure that if they start modeling data, or if they start to kind of maybe even pull in data into that environment, that they do so in a way that does not pollute your entire environment? And I think that's where kind of this evolution came from data analyst to analytics engineer over the past few years, which makes a lot of sense. And indeed it was popularized by DBT, because that modeling part is something that they support, and that they support very well, that business could do now, but according to kind of the best practices that the data engineering teams have put in place over the years. I don't know if that's the way you see it as well, Maryam.
Yeah, I think DBT really helped. So all the features that they provide, it really supports what analytics engineer is trying to bring out to the data. So they provide documentation, which is a very good. Also the data lineage part, it is very handful, and I think also easy to read, easy to explain for analytics and engineering. To if we want to explain, okay, how is your data influence? So they have like all the features that were required to have. So also like do you have production environment that you can easily say, okay, I'm deploying it now to production, that it's easy to track. So that's why DBT indeed made it like very popular. So it's nice.
Yeah, I think, well, again, maybe I am still with the DBT engineer as the analytics engineer. So I'm just going to go with that. If my assumptions are wrong, please correct me. But I think what really attracts me, like I think it's really where the money is that we had like data analysts that were writing SQL queries. There's a lot of data. The SQL can handle really well. Now DBT, you can kind of like stitch queries together, and now you have pipelines, and now you have all these things. It's like I've seen data engineering projects that were basically just a scheduler, like Airflow or something. But in the end, we're just using BigQuery, right? Because you don't have to worry about the compute scales and everything. And it feel like, I mean, at the time it was like, okay, this is normal. But looking back now, it's like, okay, you're gonna have Airflow, which is like another beast on its own, and now you need to manage this just to run queries in order, right? Like you can tell someone, hey, run this, then run this, then run this, and DBT kind of did that, right? Like it kind of stitched everything together, and by doing that, there's so much you can do. There's so much value you can bring as one person,
Yeah.
right?
That's the whole point. But then that's where I do want to challenge your statement of saying it's a DBT engineer, because if today you need to have one person in a business team that can kind of help that business team get insights, I would rather go for an analytics engineer than a data analyst, because that analytics engineer can also it goes beyond just modeling the data. It's modeling up until the visualization of the data, and then hopefully business teams are gradually becoming more and more data literate, that they can work with those reports themselves. You don't need the analyst to kind of pre-analyze and give you the insights up front anymore. So you can basically go from model to report, and business consumes the reports themselves, and it's not an analyst anymore, and it's kind of crunch the numbers and get insights out of it. But the younger generation is now kind of filling a lot of those business units as well. They are more data savvy, so they can read data much better.
Interesting trend. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. So you're saying like more and more people are becoming data savvy, and maybe there is less need to have a specific data analyst role.
Yes, but an analytics engineer will cover more, because he will also cover the visualization part.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying it's not just a DBT engineer. It goes further.
To me, it's also much more than just the tech stack. Like it's to me like if you have a spectrum, like a data analyst and a data engineer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like data analyst is extremely close to the business, understands the business very well, is data savvy in a sense, very good with Excel, these type of things. Other side of the spectrum, like the data engineer, much farther removed from the business.
Doesn't want to know about the
Doesn't
business
want to
either,
know
right?
about it. And but knows a lot about technical stuff. How should we model stuff? From a technical point of view, what are best practices? How do we keep this maintainable? And the analytics engineer is a bit in between, and still very close to the business. Also knows these best practices. And indeed, like in a changing world where people are becoming more tech savvy, where maybe you need less dedicated.
A lot of depends on the tooling as well. It goes a bit hand in hand, if you can say, because DBT indeed that made analytics engineer more popular, because there was a tool now that everything that analytics engineer can do easier. I think, for instance, becoming more tech savvy, that there are more or less visualizations that an analyst is doing, that the people who are using the visualizations creating by itself is again Microsoft Copilot. A lot of those things that you can just ask, I think those are the tools that are going to help them to get their insights. So I think tooling with the roles evaluation, that goes actually hand in hand.
Maybe a question then. I mean, I understand from what I hear, it's like an analytics engineer does more than just create DBT pipelines or whatever. There's also the visualization, there's the whole business understanding. But can you have an analytics engineer that does not know DBT? Or do you feel like this is there like
I think it's possible, but it's very hard.
What would be the...
You will bump into DBT at every corner.
Yeah.
But I think, well, that's my personal meaning. I think you can be an analytics engineer without having to use DBT, because it's about putting in things into practice, like the versioning part, like the putting the best practices, like the documentation.
So
if you do it,
it's like you advocate for these principles, and DBT is a nice box that kind of carries everything, so it makes your job easier. But if you don't want to, you could.
And it's today the de facto standard box for these things.
Exactly.
And it's huge. Like the community is huge. They announced today on LinkedIn that they reached their Slack community as 100,000 members.
Really?
100,000 is crazy, eh?
Almost the same as our listeners.
They have a bit of time to go.
We'll get there.
That is interesting,
Indeed. Maybe talking about
what I also find interesting about DBT as a tool, technical tool, that it's such a big community, so much hype, so much like a bit of a paradigm change on how we approach this, and it is so super simple as a tool.
Yeah,
like it's literally just I have a tool that says please execute these SQL files in this order and populate some values. That's the tool, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very interesting to see that something so minimal.
With some templating, right? Like take this X and I'll put a number of whatever.
It's funny thing that I read on an article was someone mentioned that people often say, but what DBT does, I could do it also with my Python scripts. Yes, everyone can do it with their Python scripts, but DBT productize it. So
exactly.
They made it look nice, like they came up, like they put a lot of stuff up. But I think that's why what appeals me, is like it's such a simple idea. But it's just genius because no one thought about it. It's not like no one could do it.
Yeah.
But it's like it was
No
it was
one
a very,
thought to put it in a product.
yeah,
They
but
did,
like, or
and
like
they're
do it
doing
like, I
good.
mean, yeah, I before I learned about dbt, I kind of did something like that. I had a Python script that would go and iterate and change this and change that. Actually, I was using Snowflake, so I was scheduling like tasks and all these things, right? But because the challenge I had a data analyst that was really good. He really knew the data. He knew SQL really well, right? And really, the only thing I wanted is to say, okay, run this, then run this, then run this, run this, right? And then I wrote a script and blah blah blah. But even then, at the end, it wasn't as good as dbt, right? I feel like dbt comes with a big community. It has a lot of, it's like very battle tested, right? And yeah, I think to me that's what's the appeal, right? It's like there's something like some things that some people invent that I'm like, wow, this is crazy. No wonder I didn't think of that. But then you look at dbt, it's like, I could have thought of that, like. But I think the these things are, for me, makes it even more genius,
Yeah.
I don't think a good idea needs to be rocket science. I think if it's sometimes kind of having the perspective
Yes.
to solve something very practically, and that can be a very simple solution, can be a huge invention or a huge addition to the.
I completely agree. But then that's why for me it's like the perception, having that different point of view and seeing like that, to me, I think it's like, wow. That impresses me more than something that is super complex that I would never thought, because I don't have the, everyone had the same information that they did, but they just had a moment there. It's like, oh yeah, let's just do this. So I think it's really cool. One thing you mentioned, Bart, is like the data engineers and the business or data analyst, right? Like, so there's a spectrum. A question for Maryam, not for you, Bart, so you can relax. I mean, you can answer. Maybe he was waiting for this. Yes. If you ever heard, if this is the first time you hear this sound, it probably is. Bart thought it would be good to include this in our buttons.
It's a fun sound, right?
I was just challenging him before. It's like, why do we need this? We should put something else. It's like, oh, it will come handy. Okay.
And that's the first one that he uses.
Yeah, it's the first one. He was there. His finger was twitching. It was like,
I saw him looking at the buttons. I was like, it's gonna come now.
But my question for you, Maryam, is how does analytics engineers support data engineers? Like, do they relieve the pressure of data engineers? How is this?
I think a part of it I mentioned before. Data engineers, I think they do quite a lot of hard work into creating the pipelines, making the data clean, putting hopefully some data quality checks and stuff. But in the end, it's not maintained because so they do transformations, but when they go through to the business or a data analyst or a data scientist, they are like, yeah, but it's not done how I need it. So it's not done correctly. So they started to redoing stuff, and in that process, I think they might use malpractices to say. It's just a small example. For instance, data engineer put their time to create tables with everything in lowercase and putting an underscore in the name. But when data analysts or data scientists are working on their data, they created tables that they wanted to have, but with uppercase, lowercase, all mixed up. So it's like the things that data engineer implemented, they are not maintained somehow. So I think how analytics engineer would support them in this process is to take those best practices, to take the work that they did and maintaining it, saying, okay, now we are using deployment pipelines. We are keep going to use deployment pipelines. If you want to create a view that gives an overview of this tables, we are going to keep using that view. We're going to test this on developments or create it on development. We're going to put it to UAT and then put it into production and not just create a view in the production. So it's a bit of like, they set up something that it's used throughout the data lifecycle. That's the best what I can explain.
Yeah, that's true. I think the breadth, let's say, that analytics engineers, they can put different hats. I think they understand. I think it's also good.
I think you mentioned a bit earlier, like data engineer doesn't always care about the content of the data that they're working with, and analytics engineer does.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, if you need to model data, you know what the fields mean. You know what whether it might be the right format. It might be a string, and you expect a string. Great, but is the content what you expect it to be? And that's something it's very hard to judge if you're more on the technical side and you don't see how business is using it, what it means to them, and what how it's combined with other elements to actually drive decisions, support insights, and so forth. And so there, I think they complement each other. Where on the one hand side, you want to make sure that the data feeds into your data platform in a clean way, but then making that data meaningful requires understanding the content of it. And if you try to do that for an entire organization, yeah, good luck. If you think an analytics engineer will typically I work more for specific business units or be assigned to specific business units. And in that sense, it's much more manageable because you're much closer to it, and you have a better understanding of how the people on the other side of that
so it's like
data set use it.
It also bridged a bit the silos as well.
Yeah.
From yeah.
Otherwise, you iterate a lot. It's like stitch this together this way. And it's like, nah, this is not how we're using it.
And if you have analytics engineers more embedded on the different units, are we also supporting a data mesh like?
You said it.
Wow, it was on the notes, but thanks. But yeah, maybe what's a data mesh for people that never heard this before?
Okay, I'm gonna take my part. So I think the best way to explain data mesh would be that I'm just analytics engineer or a data analyst, so that we have data literate teams. So in that case, instead of that their data requests are just coming. So with data request, I mean insight request or visualizations request or analytics request that are coming within the data team. We're going to work the other way around, meaning that the data team is going to provide the data as a product, and then the teams are going to consume data and create their own insights and stuff. So this way, analytics engineer, for instance, would be closely working within a data team, and it will be making sure that the request that within the business team, so he will make sure that the insights that are asked by those teams are delivered by the data team. So delivering data as a product by data team and consuming it and saying, okay, what can we do, or what insights do we need from this?
How much is this adopted these days, you feel?
More and more.
Yeah. I think I have a feeling that as data becomes more, everyone understands the value, that everyone's like, okay, I want this data. And then I think what I observe, people see the value and they start asking a lot the data team that was centralized, and then they start hitting limits, and then they realize as well that maybe there are some things they could do, and they know the business domain for their unit better, and then they say, oh, maybe I can do this. But then it's like, okay, but if you do this, I also make sure you update this. I want to also make sure there's documentation if the definition changes. And then you start saying, okay, then I'll own this. And then this kind of starts bubbling up in different places, and then you kind of get more to a data mesh kind of, but it's kind of like natural. But I think the first time I heard about data mesh, it felt like it was something you need to be very intentional about. But I have the impression now that it's almost like a natural progression of things, like people are kind of self-organizing more in these ways.
Yeah, I think what I've seen at many organizations is a bit the journey I described a few moments ago, where you go from chaos to kind of a centralized data team, and at some point they become victim to their own success. They are serving business, they have a lot of demands, but at some point they just can't follow anymore, and everybody gets frustrated. They get frustrated because they can't follow. Business gets frustrated because they need to wait too long for what they want, and that's a bit the context in which I was also supporting an organization 4 and something years ago when I first heard about data mesh, and when I heard the concept, and again, it's a bit like what we said with DBT, it's not rocket science. I mean, what Zhamak defined was kind of a logical evolution. Federated operating models were something that people were already talking about for quite a while. She just coined it and kind of described it as the logical next evolution, at the right moment when it became relevant for a lot of organizations. But so yes, then the solution somehow is, let's then, as a central data team, just focus on the infrastructure, the governance, making sure that everybody works in a consistent way, and that we can kind of plug, stitch stuff together. If it's a data product that finance develops, and then marketing makes one, and operations makes one, and how do we make sure that at some point you might want to see what's the cost of this and who worked on it, and that means you need to combine data from HR together with data from finance, together with data from operations, but you can do so because the standards are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a framework.
Yeah. And in order to have kind of those standards, you need good governance, and that's why it's not a big bang. It's not like tomorrow I'm going to implement data mesh, but it's more like that's the vision we want to evolve towards. So that means we're going to gradually train the business teams, or make sure that they hire the right profiles to be able to do so. We're going to put in place the right governance to have those standards, have those things that make it interoperable further down the road, because otherwise we're kind of going down a one-way street, and evolve into that direction. I think that's where a lot of organizations are today. I think nobody's like full-blown data mesh, best practice, everything, blah blah blah, and probably two organizations will have a different interpretation of data mesh, which doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
it's the idea that counts, and but that idea is stuck. So that's the interesting thing.
I think it's more like indeed like the intention, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to decentralize, you want to do this. And I think most times in practice, like you have an idea, you have a name, but there's wiggle room, right? Like there are different flavors of
Absolutely.
the same thing. Actually, maybe a side note, tangent. Not so long ago, I heard that Scrum is actually a very strict definition. And on the definition of Scrum, they say that anything that is not exactly what you're listing there, it's not Scrum. Did you know that? So like if you don't have daily stand-ups every day, it's not Scrum. You're not doing Scrum. You're doing something else. Like, but they're very strict. And it's like, then who's doing Scrum? Like who is...
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but to me, I feel like these... I mean, I don't know who wrote that and why they wrote that, but to me, these very absolute statements are very counterproductive.
Yeah,
you know, it's like
ideal world.
Yeah, it's like
reality.
who lives in this, rainbow?
Same with scaled agile.
Yeah.
The Spotify model, and if it's not a Spotify model, it's not really scaled agile. But
yeah, but it's like, who cares, right? Like, why you be so nitpicky about this? You know, it's like.
I recently heard a funny saying. Someone said, "We doesn't work in an agile way, but we work in an agile spirit."
Yeah. I think that's
politically correct.
You're not gonna offend anyone by saying that.
Yeah.
In a previous life, I heard a lot of people speaking about Wagile. It was like we're working a bit in between waterfall and agile. So it's Wagile. No, that just sounds weird. So
yeah. Like no. Thank you for your contribution. But no. All right, maybe question for you, Maryam. Well, it's here. Is there something like similar to analytics engineers to AI engineers as well?
Yeah, that's some brain food that I put there. And I think we have a term that pops up here and there is AI translators.
Okay.
And in my way of thinking, I think those would be the person. I don't know if it's similar to analytics engineer, but I would say that those would be the people. I think we needed them more and more in today's everything that's happening now. That makes business understand the use and just general concepts of AI and the tooling. So I think that is someone like the analytics engineer would be someone standing close to business and saying, you know what, ChatGPT or generative AI, you can use this in this way. Saying, for instance, I think a lot of concerns that people have at the moment or the companies have is ChatGPT safe? That would be a concern that analytics and AI translator can take up and say, okay, maybe the normal ChatGPT, the online version, is not safe for your company data, but there are other things that you can implement for implementing via Azure or something else that would make sure that your data is safe. So this person would help them with their day-to-day business questions or insecurities that they have regarding security, cost, or also to see, do you really need it? Do you not need it? That would be someone closer standing and making it sure that what AI things are implemented, it's not a black box. It's more visual. Because it's happening so fast, I don't know if they can pick it up.
It reminds me very much about a term that McKinsey coined. I want to say 4-ish years ago. Analytics translator.
Yeah, I came through their I came through their articles as well, that they also implemented really a training that put people into analytics through AI concepts, but also from the business concept. But I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I have a different opinion.
Okay.
Well, not different necessarily.
On what?
On
a good
analytics
idea.
engineers for AI.
Okay.
So my opinion is, I think, like I said, you can do quite a lot with.
No, wait. Because of confusing terms. I'm not analytics engineers. McKinsey coined the term analytics translator.
Yes. No, but what I'm saying, so the question originally was, is there something
Yeah.
like analytics engineers for AI?
Okay.
Right? So it's not really, I'm not against what you're saying. It's like a bit of a side
Mhm.
parallel track.
Okay, go.
But what I think, so there's a lot you can do with SQL.
Mhm.
In fact, a lot of the SQL engines, they have like an ML, like Redshift has Redshift ML, BigQuery has BigQuery ML, Snowflake has this. And a lot of I still think, well, a lot of AI cases that you need to build models are still from tabular data.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right? Tabular data, think of SQL. A lot of the times there's a lot of auto ML tooling that does a lot of the work for you, right? Like you can do some feature engineering in SQL. Maybe like usually the auto ML tooling is just for you to select the types, maybe it's a categorical feature. So meaning it's like there are different categories, but maybe in SQL is expressed as a string, but there's only 5 different strings, right? So usually you have a UI that you do that, and then you say, okay, train a model for me. And then you can actually export this model as a UDF, a user-defined function, which basically is a function as a transformation in SQL. If you do that, once you have the UDF, you can actually stitch it back, and then that just becomes a transformation step in your DBT pipeline. So what I'm saying is if you know SQL well, which arguably an analytics engineer should, you can do a lot of feature engineering. You can prepare the data. You can also there are some data science things is there data leakage? What are the precision recall? How can you detect these things? Right? There's a bit of there, but I don't think it's too much for people to pick up, in my opinion. I think it's still manageable. And then you can have someone like an analytics engineer that can also build machine learning models. Maybe they're not going to be the best ones, but they can build a lot of models. They can do quite a lot of stuff. They can schedule stuff. They can have the pipelines, right? And I already have a name for this.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Machine learning analytics engineer. It's a bit long, so maybe we'll just put that. Yes. Or you can put the money too, since we're coining stuff. There we go. And if you're wondering how Bart became so good at pressing buttons all of a sudden, he put some labels there. So I have to
labels on the
True story.
the
buttons.
curtain behind, it's
Yeah.
that's why we were late for the live stream. So I apologize.
That's
That
the
was
only
me.
reason.
But reiterate, what is the title going to be?
Machine learning analytics engineer. It's a bit
It's
longer.
a bit longer.
MLAE for short. Patent pending.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
because
what you're
machine
saying
learning
is,
engineer was already taken, and the feature engineer was already
Exactly. So
taken.
you just put it together, just
but you're actually not
Smash it
challenging the
No, I'm not
No.
challenging that.
AI.
No. But I think it's
It's
like
something else.
Yeah.
Something else.
It's something different. That's what I
You're
mean.
saying that the analytics engineer role will evolve to also encompass that part.
Yeah, but I
more
think
easily.
But I think it could also encompass what you're saying, right? Like if it's someone that has domain of the data of the business, right? They're already close to business, they know how it works, and they understand a bit of ML, they can explain a bit how these things work, right?
Okay.
Like they can coexist, but I think
You're saying because these technologies become easier and easier and easier, that this might be a natural evolution of the role.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is an opportunity there. There is stuff
see
on the
what you
table.
mean.
Like if most of the use cases you have are tabular, like you can do quite a lot with SQL. And I think it's like
And do you even need SQL 2 years from now?
Well, that's another question, right?
You do it in natural language.
You could do it in natural language, indeed.
Prompting it. But
it's too early. We're gonna get to the
Okay.
GPTs
Sorry,
later.
But do we really need a separate role still for that? I say somehow you have, if you take the ML engineer who kind of make sure that especially the more complex ones are built really robustly, etc., and you kind of then in your comparison you compare that to a data engineer, I guess. Because that's, you were saying like, what does that mean for AI? Didn't the role of a data scientist, wasn't that kind of the point to kind of make?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think
because I think that's because data scientists were were completing a lot of transformations and stuff. So they were spending a lot of time cleaning the data, creating the models. And it's what you said, that now that they're easier tooling, now they can do it more easily. And if there's better data, maybe they can spend less time on creating the models, but more also explaining it, like what is the use for it, how do you can. But I think again, data scientists, but then they would be like more into the business, or they would have to incorporate more and more into the business as well.
Yeah,
and
but
not just
for me, a
focus on their
data
models.
scientist had to be a bit closer to business by default.
Yeah.
I think that is what. I think it depends a bit, like also on the scale. Like if you have a huge corporation, like you tend to focus on a specific role. If you're in a smaller team, you tend to take up a bit more diverse roles, a bit of business, a bit of tech, a bit of.
Yeah, I just think that again, the feature engineering part, a lot of the struggles I see are in the compute, right? Because there's a lot of data, but SQL, you don't hear that as much with SQL, right? So if you say, okay, I'm going to build my features in SQL, in the end, a model is just a function. It's a transformation, right? Like how you get there, it's a bit more complicated. But after you have a model trained, it's just that, right? And we know how to do this in SQL. Like you just put there, right?
Yeah, but still, I think like for everything, like you need to build up a bit of expertise and something to focus on it. If you're like if you want to make it your if you want to be very good at that, like, and I think at some point, like there are trade-offs to say, like, let's create dedicated roles for something specific, versus let's make a role that is very versatile. Like there are
maybe the analytics engineer will just start doing this and we'll still call it analytics engineer, right? I'll still call it machine learning analytics engineer, even though it's long, but but that's just me, right? But I do think it's I don't know. I just feel like it's a natural thing. I mean, you can still have a world where you have analytics engineers that create this, like SQLs and whatever in the pipelines, and the machine learning engineers or the data scientists, they create that UDF, right? And you can just plug it in. But I do think there is it's also a pattern that we kind of see sometimes. Maybe I digress. But now you mentioned
I mentioned
GPT, natural language, all these things.
I only mentioned natural language.
No, my bad. But
okay.
What do you mean by natural language, Bart?
What do you think of? What's the first thing come into your mind?
No, but last week, unfortunately, we weren't able to record. We had the RootsConf.
Mm-hmm.
We also released the part 1, part 2 coming soon, right, Bart?
Yes, we actually recorded at RootsConf.
Yes. But last week as well, there was also something that came out that was pretty cool. La Plataforme. You like that?
Maybe we need to ask. Kevin is perfectly perfectly bilingual, well, trilingual, I would say. Can you say this? How should we pronounce this in French?
La plateforme.
Oh, La Plateforme.
Sounds sexy,
It got warm here. Yeah, I'm a bilingual. It's like I have speak more than one, but I forget all the languages sometimes. But yeah, what is this? So Mistral.ai, it's a French startup.
Yep.
That actually they actually raised, also was also in the news, but not to cover here.
Paris, right?
Yeah. Paris based.
So EU based, kind of competing with OpenAI.
Yep.
Right, and they released a very JetGPT like API. Right, that's what's the La Plateforme. La Plateforme is, man, I gotta stop saying this, otherwise.
La langue de l'amour.
Oh my god, stop. So yeah, I mean, it's basically if you don't like ChatGPT or whatever, if you like support EU companies, I guess this is an option. But I know for a fact that you've played with it.
I did.
What is your feeling on this? Maybe before you go in there, I know that when they released this as well, they advertised that this is better than ChatGPT 3.5.
Yeah.
Again, we already discussed here before that benchmarking GPT model is a bit tricky, right? A lot of times it's very subjective, but it seemed that there's a lot of potential. But maybe Bart, what was your experience with this?
So maybe just to add to that, so the platform was released, and the platform is simply manage models. So they host the models for you. You get an endpoint, and you can send an API request, and you get a chat completion. That's what I play with, or an embedding back. That's what La
Plateforme.
That's platform.
I needed to put that in a button too. La Plateforme.
That's what that is. But also, they also released a new model. I don't know exactly when. I want to say last week.
7 billion parameters, something.
very good one, and that's the one that you're actually talking about. That was better than.
But the model is the same as the endpoint, or no?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not 100% sure. The documentation is a little bit vague. So when you use the endpoint, you have Mistral Tiny, you have Mistral Medium. No, you have Mistral Tiny, you have Mistral Small, you have Mistral Medium. Mistral Small is said to be using the model that was released via a torrent link. Quite interesting. And the Mistral Medium is the highest quality endpoint, but it's a bit vague on what it is exactly. But probably the information is out there and didn't search enough. But I use that one, which is apparently the highest quality one out there today.
Okay.
So interesting. So they use the same approach as Gemini, kind of having a tiny version and something that can run on a phone, basically, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that. Yeah.
And then bigger and bigger versions.
Yeah. And so I played around with it, and I think it's fair to say it's better than ChatGPT 3.5. This is just purely based on playing around. To me, it's a bit like ChatGPT 4 on shrooms. It hallucinates like a lot.
Yeah,
like a lot.
Yeah.
Like the code generation is actually quite nice, but when you ask it to summarize factual stuff that happened in the past, it's half of the time wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But then, and
that's my experience.
When you say summarize, like, do you give the information, or like you just say ask the web?
No, it doesn't ask. It doesn't access the web. So I just ask it to who. For example, I can ask who's Murilo. You have a long name. Can you tell me your name?
Murilo Cunhas Cunhapet.
Wow.
Just wanted to after Kevin.
Who is this Murilo that works? But I can ask, like, who is this Murilo that works at Dateroots, and it will give me a very nice summary, and like 50% of that will be correct, and 50% will be like you will think, oh wow, yeah, that's just you're trying to motivate me. No, but like it's gonna be a bit overkill.
But you didn't pass my, like, you didn't look online.
No, this is just purely based on
the weights,
on exactly
But
the data it has seen. Yeah.
It knows about me then.
It knows about you. Yeah, but it's more impressed about you than it should be.
Wow, that's consensus.
more.
Yeah, right. Like,
Where's the button?
where's the? There we go. All right. Moving on, I guess. No. But so
but that was an interesting experience, and but I do at the same time I think it's impressive what they already have.
Yeah. But they actually been raising quite a lot of money. I don't know if
they raised a shit ton of money.
Yeah, but actually no. I mean, yes, they did, but this is kind of it's an interesting thing, because so far Europe has been on the forefront of regulation, but not really on the model side yet. So we were regulating companies that were somewhere else. But Mistral is the first high-profile one, because it's they openly fight OpenAI, claiming that they at least are open.
I want to challenge that. I have a hot take on this.
Oh, okay. And they raised, I think, 133 million a few months ago, and now raised money again.
I think for 450-ish.
But there's a German company called Aleph Alpha, which also raised 460 million a few months ago. And then the difference is that Aleph Alpha is closed.
No.
They target kind of government and private organizations and have a different business model, which is fine. Apparently, there are only 61 people working at Aleph Alpha, which, if you compare to OpenAI, 1,200, it's like, what? But so it's really not the only kind of European AI, LLM, Gen AI company spinning up. They've all developed their models. Just it's the open source one.
Yeah, exactly.
The open source one part.
And I think because it's the open source one, it's a bit like touted as Europe's open savior on LLMs.
Yeah.
And I wonder if their strategy on open source is fully for the greater good. Because like if you look at the people that if you look at the funding rounds, 450 million-ish, none of them are NGOs, eh? These are all commercial investors.
Yeah. Of course.
At some point they want to make money. So if you look at the license that this is under, Apache 2, it is not hard at some point to say this a new version we will not publish. Like they will say like maybe if it's based on the older version, they will still release the older version. It's not hard to change that, right?
Yeah.
I hope they never do it. I hope they will always stay open source. But at the same time, because it's open source today, like they're a bit touted as a savior, it allows them to grow very quickly. Everybody knows about Mistral. Much less people know about alpha, for example. At the same time, their product is not really up to par. Like if you look at the platform, like it's just starting out. It's like literally just an endpoint. Like it's definitely not as far as OpenAI is with its assistants and stuff like that. But they have a huge community because they offer open source. So they get a lot of benefits from the open source part. And if you look at the Apache license, it's very interesting to see that because they publish it like this on the models that they open source, not on the platform, not on
La platform.
Yeah. On the models, they have zero liability and they don't have to provide any warranties because they publish it like this. Huh?
Oh, really?
An interesting thing to think
Even
about as well.
We talked when Sam was here too. We talked about the
different open source model.
but there was something like a law that if you're open source stuff,
that is something in the making. That would change this potentially in the future, but that is today's not the case. Huh?
So your hot take is that they're not open source; they're just good at marketing. In other words, open source equals marketing.
As OpenAI. They're gonna start with something that's open, and as soon as it's successful, they're gonna make a paying version of it. Because why do all these people put money in this company? Is at some point to get money out.
Yeah.
And if you're forever open source, there's not gonna be any return on that investment. So,
but
for sure,
also the regulations part. That's what you're also mentioning, that they're trying to avoid that they have to put in documentation or follow all the regulations by being open source. Huh?
At this stage, we'll see what the AI Act does. I think the AI Act actually will change that. But
but apparently there was an article that came out, I think 2-3 days ago, reporting that the surprise, the French government has lobbied a lot at the European Union for the moment to weaken the AI Act because now they have a company that's playing in that field, and suddenly they have an interest, and so it's like maybe we want to tune it down. The Germans the same, because they have Aleph Alpha, but they also have Helsing, which is even lesser known because it's in the defense industry, so it's Gen AI but for defense.
And what I'm wondering about, if we ignore a bit the AI Act that is up and coming, like if you take something like this from a legal point of view, so they create something, they publish it as open source, in this case Apache 2, where there is no liability, there is no warranty, and then you create a hosted service, I'm thinking, but I'm not sure about this, but I'm thinking that they will be liable on the SLAs of that hosted service. Like, can it respond quickly enough? Can it take the load? Like does it function as the API specs work? But that they're not liable on anything that the output of that actual model, because the model they're hosting is an open source asset. I'm wondering about this. I'm not sure on the legality of that. But it's an interesting discussion.
But it's going to limit, because there the AI Act doesn't come into play, and I think if any company wants to build something on top of it, they will need, so the one building something will need to require Mistral to comply with a certain number of provide evidence that they comply with a certain number of things. And then if nobody builds something on top of it, because Mistral says, no, it's open source, and so we're not going to provide anything, nobody's going to build anything on top of it. And in that case, it's going to collapse again. So they will have to.
They will have to, but definitely. But I agree with you.
Yeah. I was just trying to bring back the open source equals marketing. But it's not a new take.
I know that we said this a while ago, but it was a bit to trigger people. I don't think open source is marketing, definitely not. But I think you can, if you position it well. I think it is strong in your marketing.
Yeah,
but
it plays a role.
I think it's still open source for a lot of different reasons. As also a greater good aspect to it. It informs people about what you're doing, how you're doing stuff. What is the state of the art? Don't putting it behind a paywall.
But just because something is for the good doesn't mean.
But we can't ignore that it is an important market.
I mean, there are benefits to you as well, right? Like you said, the liability stuff. There's the community. There is like brand awareness. There's all these things. It's like doesn't need to be. If you're doing something for good, doesn't mean you always need to hurt yourself, right?
No, exactly.
So I agree. You also mentioned that the way they released the model. The big model, I think 87 gigabytes or something, not sure. They actually just released a Tor link on Twitter.
Torrent, not Tor.
Sorry, Torrent. Thanks.
Torrents, that's been a while.
Yeah, I was thinking torrent. It was to download movies.
Whoa.
Oh,
Police? She's right here. But
I've never downloaded a movie.
yes. Sips your beer.
Just Mistral.
Why are you crossing your fingers behind you?
But maybe a question is, okay, the model's open source, cool. So what? Does it change a lot? Like, okay, I can download the models. Well, first of all, can I? Do I have all the space? Do I have the hardware? And if I do, can I run the inference? Am I really like, is this now like, okay, anyone can do this now kind of deal? Or is it still limited to the people that have the infrastructure resources that can afford for this?
I think inference, everybody can do it.
Yeah. You think it's fine to like, if
Well,
you
you need
download
some resources to do it, but I think for the inference is manageable.
is it financially sustainable if I download the models and I just rent a GPU on the cloud and just run it? Is this like match kind of what you would pay if you have the platform or platform?
You're getting better at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Keep practicing.
it's the beer.
Ooh, that's a difficult question, man. It's a bit like, do you want to buy it or build it yourself? Huh?
Well,
Like you,
Kinda,
what you
right?
get here,
The model's
basically, you
there.
get like a major component to build it yourself, but you're still building the tooling around it yourself if you want to use it day to day.
yeah,
If we ignore, like, if we don't look at it from a point of view, like, I'm in my notebook and I'm experimenting a bit, right? Like,
yeah,
but if you really want to automate some process with it, for example, like, I would use Kevin. What would I use?
La plateforme.
Yes, in this case,
but
at this point. Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's just like if there are privacy concerns,
Well, yeah.
you know, like, and then let's host something. But I also heard that in the past saying, well, if you want to host something yourself, it's gonna cost way too much. So it's still cheaper to just go with ChatGPT or OpenAI or whatever, right?
But that depends a bit on like what are you building, right? Like if you're if you want to build like a small web shop to build your to sell your Christmas hats, and you want to use this to automate some translations, OpenAI or Kevin, what?
La plateforme.
That is probably fine, right? Like there are no real data privacy issues or like intellectual property issues that you should be concerned about.
Yeah, but
from the moment that you are the national police corp and you're doing this stuff, you want to translate stuff that is related to investigations, then you probably want to be on-prem in a very, very secure environment, and you want to do everything yourself.
and you don't
Bring
think
that a
that
bit,
you don't think that the costs are much different in the two?
I think it depends on like the use case should give an answer on, is this cost realistic
Yeah,
or
I see what
valid
you're
for the
saying.
use case?
No, but I'm really just thinking like compared with ChatGPT. You have ChatGPT and you want to do the same thing on La Plataforma. Sorry, it was a bit sloppy. Are the costs about the same? Should you worry about? Is this something it takes into account, or I don't like? I'm just.
The thing is that the way I use it, it is so minimal. I'm not processing thousands of PDFs every day. I think then at that level you need to start thinking about the cost from the API endpoints
I see.
point of view.
I see.
I know that when
La plateforme.
came out,
My contribution is
they,
also
Yeah.
50%.
they defined, and I'm a little bit bullshitting here, but I think it was €2 or dollars per 1 million tokens, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that announcement came out, and a number of other platforms immediately said, "Oh, we're going to lower it."
Oh, really?
So there is really like a price competition at this point going on.
Yeah.
That is,
Yeah, but ChatGPT still feels like it's ahead, right?
I think it is ahead.
Actually, I heard
Very subjectively, just from
Yeah,
my own experimentations. That's it.
I actually heard that Sam, what's his last name? Sam, the guy from OpenAI. Altman. Yes. He said in an interview that no one can catch up with OpenAI. They're too far ahead. And he said this, and he's like, "Well, it's your job to try. I guess you need to try to beat us, but you're never gonna do. It's hopeless." He said.
But everybody's comparing to GPT-4 for the moment,
Yeah.
and rumors say that they have 4.5 ready to come out now-ish.
Any moment.
So that means, if everybody's comparing themselves to their old version, yes, then they're miles ahead. I mean,
yeah, that's the thing.
And the same with images, because the DALL-E 3 was nice. Okay, Stability now V6 was
Midjourney.
Midjourney V6, sorry, that released this week somewhere. Yesterday was I mean, the images are amazing.
Yeah.
So on that front, maybe a bit less.
Yeah.
But on text, it's
Yeah, but that's if you look at the popularity of ChatGPT, I think it's also how much data you put in, or people that you're using it, they're already training the model. So it's like they already started quite a long time ago. So everyone is using it. Everyone starts with ChatGPT. Okay, then they might go to other platforms, but they started there. So it's already doing a lot.
they're
It's
on
already
Microsoft.
Yeah, it's
so
already
Microsoft
popular.
is
It has a
also-
lot of attention. It has a lot of money. I think a lot of it's in their advantage. So
Yeah, I agree with that. And you mentioned also image generation.
Yeah, Midjourney was a Peter de Buizer, an old colleague and friend of mine. He made this small video on LinkedIn. I think not a video, but like clickable pictures. I don't know how carousel is that.
Yeah.
Also a French word.
Yeah.
But
Just saying there.
where the first version I think was he went through the versions of Midjourney, and you could kind of click, and every time you had the same render with the same prompt, but in the newer version, and the differences are in a year and a half. It's
impressive.
insane.
Yeah, but
Insane.
we have even on through the tools, so the previous version of Datatopics, let's say, there are some image generated, AI generated images, and like the difference is crazy.
It's crazy, yeah. And so for me personally, I used Midjourney V5 up to V5.2. I think it was the latest version a lot until DALL-E 3 came out. And the major difference was that Midjourney V5 and everything before that, it was very much descriptor driven. So you had to be very specific on. It's not just this Brazilian guy with wearing a Christmas hat standing in the snow, but you also need to add descriptors exactly how you want it to look. And to basically think a bit about like what was this data trained on. I want it to be HDR, 4K, inspired by ArtStation.
Yeah,
to really have this style. It's of course you use words, but it's not really natural language. And DALL-E 3 changed this by really having natural language. I want to have a picture of a Brazilian guy with wearing a Christmas hat standing in the snow, and then you get a first version, and then you iterate on that by adding a small description. And well, not exactly the same because you don't have really this chat functionality. The V6 now also is very much a natural language. You don't have to really think about the scripts, like just in natural words express what you want to see, and it's really way better than it was. I think what I also noticed is that text generation is way better, and I think on par with DALL-E 3.
Text generation in images, you mean?
Text generation in images. What I mean is that I want to see a guy holding a logo that says the city is over there. And if you used to do this with 3 versions ago, like there are letters, but it's horrible. And it's still a bit horrible, like with DALL-E 3 and with V6, like you still need to do a few retries. Like you get typically 4 versions, like in one of them it's okay, but it is you can get there. And it's like to me also that is a bit on par now with DALL-E 3. So that's interesting to see. And I personally like the style of Midjourney much more. Like it's more of a artistic style.
Interesting. We talked about text. I'm gonna move a bit on. I don't know if anyone.
Sure.
We talked a bit about text. We talked a bit about the images as well. But how about audio generated?
Audio generated.
Yes. So right now we're in a Christmas.
Video. Is that next? Because
video as well, I guess. But you could say like videos, like sequences of images.
Yeah.
Even though there is a component, right? You need to sync it through.
Yeah, but we had a colleague of ours posted some stuff today, where it's always short clips, like 2-3 seconds, whatever. And 2 out of 3 were actually quite interesting. It was one with the train was a bit strange because the plume was going forward, which technically shouldn't happen but there should be a lot of wind for the plume to go forward. But that becomes better and better.
Well. Getting better quick as well.
Yes, that's for me. That's going to be the thing of 24.
Yeah,
true. I think it's there. I think it's up there. And
isn't it that Gemini also had it integrated in it that either they could recognize the video of what was happening in the video, you could upload the video in Gemini and then recognize what's happening, and you can see, okay, if you put an exercise or something, okay, is it executed well or not?
But was it the demo or not? Because the Gemini, I don't know the controversy.
Yeah.
It was not in their official demo.
The official demo was apparently completely mocked up. So
A bit.
It was completely manufactured. But audio generation,
Yes. You sent me a few things.
I did send you. I'm not promising it's good.
You sent me some AI generated music.
Music is maybe a strong.
That's a side career.
Yeah,
For
maybe music is a very strong word for it. There were some sounds AI generated.
Okay.
This is also a festivity, like Christmas time.
We made it a bit of a competition, right?
Oh, did we? If I knew it was a competition, I probably would have.
Hello, it's always.
Yeah, I know, right?
We each have
Everything
3
on this.
short clips, right?
I sent you 3. I sent you maybe more. I don't know, but it's not.
Oh, you have 4. I have
4.
3.
You have 3.
You have more chances.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm not. I don't like my chances.
And we used a Hugging Face space by Facebook Music Gen. It's a Facebook-based model, right?
Meta.
Used the same, right?
Yes.
Meta, sorry.
Did you pay for the actual the more expensive stuff? Because I saw you could pay. I know you bought.
No, the free Hugging Face on.
Purely prompting skills.
We start with yours.
Sure, let's do it.
And what was the assignment?
So the assignment was to generate Christmas-related songs using this
Christmas atmosphere.
Christmas atmosphere. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I tried different things. I'll talk a bit about it afterwards.
Yeah, I'm wondering what. Let's see if I'm not sure if we can play this. Let me try.
That's the wrong one.
It's the wrong one.
Yeah,
very
this is definitely
Christmassy.
the wrong one.
Yeah, very good.
Then maybe let me just.
Tell me what each one to start with.
This one. The other ones I have no idea actually.
The other one was a bit
Yeah.
50 centish.
Yeah, I could.
It was extremely 50 centish. That's actually what I was trying to input because I wanted to. Well, what I was trying to do, I thought it would be funny to take some song like really, like rap or something like this, and then make it Christmassy. So I tried to put it in, but it did not work.
Okay.
So that's why I think maybe this is one of the original.
Oh, wow. This is like a
Dark Christmas.
Yeah, it's a bit
This is it.
spooky.
Yeah, but you see, but that's the thing.
Like
But this one I didn't put so there were 2 options. You can pass in an audio file
Yeah.
and then say in that a prompt, or you can just kind of request something. So this one I just requested.
okay.
But actually I think all the other
It's like
ones.
building
um,
up to a suspense. Like
yeah,
something
yeah,
is gonna
let's
happen.
listen
No,
again.
but yeah.
This is like a
Yeah.
bunch of guys wearing
Yeah.
bananas in like a lowrider in a Cadillac,
Yeah.
like with hydraulic.
Like with
Following
the thing that
someone?
Yeah.
the car that jumps. Yeah. That's how I spent Christmas
Yeah.
back in Brazil.
Let's listen to Christmas songs.
No, I think you can even put that as kind of an intro to a Bruce Springsteen song.
Really?
I think that could somehow work.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Was it really?
But I think we can disregard the other ones.
Okay.
but,
Really?
Yeah. I think the other ones are actually
That was the best one. You should have built up, man.
I'm actually wondering what I did because I thought I downloaded a couple, but I think everything else is just the original songs. Actually, the names all messed up. So yeah, apologize for that.
Okay, but this was a nice one, right?
Yeah,
bit,
it was okay, but like
It was
so,
original.
It's a bit
I will say
aggressive.
I tried 50 Cent, I tried Snoop Dogg, I tried DMX, I tried Unwritten. I feel like a lot of stuff
Metallica's
kind of sounded no, I didn't try Metallica, but I tried to put there and I say make it more Christmassy, and then I was like, okay, this didn't work. And then I actually went on ChatGPT and I say describe Christmas songs, and it says, oh, usually has a lot of bells, a lot of brass instruments and this and the festive, and I copy pasted the definition, I put it there. Still nothing, but I still feel like you have to be a bit
Yeah,
descriptive.
because here you had bells and you had bass, and I think that was kind of the main.
Yeah, but I think
Difference.
what else you need for a Christmas song?
But
That's yours. Okay.
it's super happy.
Yeah, right.
It's nice, right?
It's not bad. It's good. I can see like Randall's with the Santa with his yeah.
This is not bad.
Uh-huh.
It gives you the vibe.
Give you another one.
Okay.
Do it. This sounds more Christmassy. If you.
Yeah. I see snow.
Well, not in Belgium, just raining.
I have a last one.
We have
last
to go
one.
10 degrees. Like
Yeah.
Final one.
That's a romantic.
Say, Kevin.
Say it, Kevin. Go.
Platform.
Ooh. All right, this is a different show. So let's move on. All right, what was your favorite?
The first one from Bart's series.
Yeah.
Really?
The organ, yeah.
What about you, Maria?
I think the second one was good as well. But yours was in a different context.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
You
think
were a
we
bit
just have to
more,
go further with that.
Okay, I'll try.
I think if I'm like on Christmas Day, wake up very early and drink like three espressos, go to the gym, work out very hard.
That's
That's
the
like an
second.
episode of that song.
Okay, so if anyone's at the gym, just I'll send you the full album afterwards. All right, cool. So, well, yeah, I think the audio. Actually, I think audio is probably the trickiest one. I think generating audio is probably a very hard task. Huh? I think also
Music is mathematical, huh? So
true, but I remember for the AI song contest, the Datatopics, I think I remember looking into, and there's like so many things, like if you want to put lyrics and if you want to like the rhythm and the tone and how do you represent these things, it's not sure. I feel like it's more challenging, I might guess. I think I'll have a harder time generating something with music than images or even video or text, I think.
that's a question, because we participated in the AI song contest for a few years in a row, pre-gen AI.
True.
Would it not be a lot easier now?
I think so. Well, I would guess yes.
You have tons of managed things that are way
Yeah.
better than we just
Mhm.
showed them.
Yeah.
This is a free open source. I think it would be easier. Yeah. YouTube also announced that they're going all in on
Gen AI.
Gen AI together, and interesting actually to partner up with some specific artist on this
Okay.
that gives their consent to use their.
I think they would do it very good because they have like a lot of data with
Indeed,
the
yeah.
videos as well. I think they have a good scope.
It's gonna be interesting to see.
We should maybe ask Dorian to prepare something for
Yeah.
music Gen AI. I think.
This year
interested.
maybe we I
Yes.
don't know. Did we win last year's?
Yeah.
Every year.
Definitely go for it now.
Yeah, I don't know, but actually, yeah, it would be cool to have a look. But not everything's all rosy. I think job applications. You have any thoughts on that, Bart? Yeah, I see that sigh. That's a man that's it's been through stuff.
I've been through stuff. No, I'm gonna be very honest. Like in my position, it's been a while that I read a lot of motivation letters, and we just recently opened a vacancy for a marketing intern.
Oh.
Very excited to have someone on board. If you're interested, check out
Yes.
careers.datatopics.io. But do not use ChatGPT for your motivation letter.
But everybody doesn't.
Everybody does.
But then it has
and like
no value anymore.
It has no value anymore
Because you cannot...
everything looks the same.
Yeah.
Everything looks the same. Everyone now has a striking personality. Like you have to constantly these type of words, it immediately triggers like, yeah, this you didn't read your own.
Yeah.
Didn't write yourself, but
Yeah, but it's crazy, right? Like I think if you read a lot of motivation letters, it's very easy to tell. But maybe if someone is writing once and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is good enough," like, "Oh yeah, I don't think they'll tell."
I have from the point of view that
From the writer, because they do it once,
Yeah.
right? And they probably submitted a lot of places, but they're like, "Oh yeah, this looks like a person did it." But like if you read,
they will think that's striking personality. Yeah. You put it in.
I guess I do.
I think we'll also just need to evolve and stop asking motivation letters and ask something else.
Yeah.
Where they really do need to apply themselves.
But even then, it's a bit hard, right? Like, what
is the alternative?
Yeah.
That's a good. I don't have the answer yet. I
Maybe we can
it's
ask
going to be a
ChatGPT.
topic, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same with tech education, where a lot of the professors and stuff were like complaining, but everybody's using it to write their papers. Yeah, but then let's maybe ask them to do something different.
Yeah.
Fair point.
And criticize stuff that has been written.
Yeah.
Which is then maybe a different approach. And here maybe we just need to do the same and just take it as a given. People will use it, but what can we do differently to kind of...
Using it is not a problem. I think making it more personal, because it's that you can use ChatGPT to write your text better.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to use it. But if someone is not taking the time to make it something more personal and then submitting it, do we want to spend our time?
I mean, I've also read quite a few the last months, and they just look all the same.
But doesn't that mean that they're just that person didn't spend the time enough to make it more personal?
Yeah. But I'm even wondering, like, you have the technical coding interviews, right? Oh, do a linked list. ChatGPT, what's the linked list? Okay, that's it. Like, but it really makes you wonder, right? Like, what kind of exercise can you give
Well, yeah, and I think you can give an exercise, like for example, for the marketing. I thought about this. For the marketing intern, you can give an exercise. No, wait. I'm gonna say first why I think why the motivation letter is there, because we in the system that we use is optional. You can select it whether you want the motivation letter or not. We did for the marketing intern, and to me, a marketing intern, like we do not have a marketing team. I'm not sure what I should focus on. Interns are typically people that are still in school, so there are very few resumes that truly jump out in terms of experiences. So you're also interested, like realistically say this person has very limited like professional experience. So you also think interested, like what is their motivation? What is this person about? That's why I think motivation letter is interesting, if it's not ChatGPT generated. But what is the alternative to me is like that you ask like really an assignment, like create a visual of this, create a visual of that. But
what we are looking for, even in the motivational letter, is read through our website, our socials.
True, exactly.
And come with something, your insights on our brand and what we could do differently.
And that to me immediately is that I'm a bit hesitant about, because it requires an investment from the person. Even from
but before, a letter also required an investment.
That's
you
true.
That's
true.
Right, and now it's just a prompt, and you get it, and it's 10 seconds.
But arguably, it's less, right? Because you could reuse most of the motivation letter. Like if I write a text, I have a bio, right? I write it once, I can submit it different places.
It's true.
So I think it's like the level of investment is a bit.
But it depends for the job, because a lot of jobs require you to submit a portfolio or things like that, which also require you to apply yourself.
But asking a motivation letter, I think you don't. If that person creates it via ChatGPT, then you automatically don't want it, because it's going to create that, because marketing person is going to create your posts on LinkedIn on stuff. So if he's not or she's not taking her or his time, then do you really? I think that it's a personality thing.
Yeah, I think it's funny because it's like in the motivation letter, the person shows how unmotivated they are. They just like copy paste it from ChatGPT.
Because that's gonna happen with your LinkedIn posts.
Yeah.
Plus, we want them to look at our website before they kind of commit to joining us, or look at our socials to kind of have a bit of feel, or am I going to feel?
But indeed, I think Maryam struck a good point that it's not like you don't want them to use it necessarily, right? Because if in the reality in the job someone asks, hey, can you write something? You like, ChatGPT. Like I'm thinking also from the coding perspective, right? If you ask what's the linked list, can you do this with the linked list, whatever, and I use ChatGPT and you say, oh no, but that's cheating. But it's like, oh, if I was on the job, I would do the same thing, right?
That is true.
So it's like maybe even the kind of skills that the question we were asking is like maybe outdated, maybe even, right? You know,
exactly.
And it's like he's not cheating; it's fair games. That's what you would do on the job. And maybe the issue is not that you're using ChatGPT, but the issue is that if you use ChatGPT the way you're using for motivation letters, and you do the same thing for LinkedIn posts or whatever post, like as a marketing person, that's really bad, right? Like there's no DNA, there's no uniqueness, right? You're just you're a chatbot now.
I think you're not looking for someone who can write very well. You're looking for someone who can see insights, who can work with those insights, create something that is like, okay, that person looked at it and he knows or she knows. So you're not looking like he can write a good post. No.
Yeah, indeed. So, but I can imagine it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Because it's like you open like like 15 people applied, great, and then you started. It was like, ChatGPT.
Do you ever, Maryam, do you use ChatGPT in your communication?
In my communication, very rarely. I think what I think I use more. Well, for example, one time I was preparing some slides and I needed to give a little blob about the technologies, why I'm motivating the use of these things. So I just say, hey, ChatGPT, generate 40 bullet points why you should use this. And then I pick like 5 and I rewrite it a bit.
Okay.
So that's
interesting.
For me, it's like the other way around. So what I do when I use ChatGPT is like, okay, I have to write about this, and my thoughts are this, and I want to write about this concept as well. Can you write it into a text? So I provide with like, okay, this is what I want to write. Can you write the text for me? So I try to give the context when I ask ChatGPT something.
Yeah, I think indeed. I think that's also, there are different ways you can use it. I think that's also a good one. But I think for me, it doesn't replace me in the sense that I kind of know what I'm looking for, right? Like I know that if like this is clear hallucinations, forget. You know, like I'm not using this as a replacement of myself in a way.
Yeah. Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that I'm irreplaceable. Wow. Ouch. People hurt.
Look at the time.
Whoa, it's late.
I sometimes do use it actually in my communication.
you use in your communication?
Yeah, it was mostly when I'm
Especially with you, Milo.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say
Please
it
reply.
explains a lot. I was wondering why you keep saying you have a striking personality.
no, it's not in direct messages. It's more like formal communication and in a combination formal communication and limited in time, because it really speeds up stuff.
Yeah.
And what I used to do is that I have that I say I want to write. So all the content typically comes from me, but I say I want to write this and this and this, and make some bullet points, make like formal communication and this tone of voice. You get a first output. Then you typically say like the next step is that I say make it a bit more level-headed, no extraordinary with the words, no striking, no exhilarating.
Yeah.
Get a next version. That's what I used to do.
Yeah.
And then I rewrite a bit here and there. Now I have in ChatGPT you can create like your own chatbot where you can have like a pre-context. So actually,
GPTs.
yeah, and I actually injected some larger things that I wrote before. And then I say use this as a tone of voice to generate the input for the next thing.
Wow.
And that actually really helps. That really helps.
That's really
Crazy
cool.
how
Yeah.
easy it is to make your
Yeah.
personal.
And
We can
Assistant.
clone Bart now.
but
Yeah.
I enjoy writing a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes, a bit as a hobby. And what I do there, I think it's a bit cheating. But what I do now, I actually did in the last 2 weeks
Write a book.
a bit, is that you post in your text, and you say add comments to this text, and you give an example how you add the comments. I do double dashes, and then you add comments to the text on how you can improve the text. And that is actually very interesting, because you don't get just a blob of text that is a rewritten version that's very hard to work in, but you get like
Comment.
an outside opinion on your text. That to me was very valuable.
There's like a peer writer kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's so many. Is there an app for this? I feel like there could be. Yeah, like you write stuff and it just kind of gives you real time, almost like the word.
Well, what
Google
I used
Doc,
to use
right?
is Grammarly.
Yeah.
Grammarly does
indeed.
this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. But I guess this is a Grammarly on steroids.
Yeah.
It could do way more than that,
Serious steroids, yeah.
right?
Like elephant level steroids.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But I think ChatGPT has a lot of good stuff, a lot of bad stuff. Change a bit the flavor, let's say. Came across into this article from LinkedIn saying that ChatGPT is the best and worst thing to ever happen to AI. I thought it was interesting take, but his argument is that people say unprecedented pace of AI progress, but usually when they're saying is the level of applications, industrialization. And I think ever since this article was posted, there were a few different research developments, but his argument is that the R&D, like the problems that we've had since the transformer architecture, which is what ChatGPT is, hasn't actually improved that much. Like it kind of, because the industrialization and the popularity and just having bigger models instead of trying to find better architectures and really truly break through in the research area. So on one hand, ChatGPT popularized a lot of AI and GPT models, but on the other hand, it kind of stopped true research, or what they call true research.
Well,
Right.
I want to challenge that, because it was, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Was somebody who wrote an article also on kind of the next architecture for
Yeah.
models. So I don't necessarily think it stops progress per se. It just amplified the adoption. That for sure. I think we
I
won't
agree.
be talking about AI. I mean, every application now has an AI component to it, where even just a year ago, half of them did not. So
True.
it's just become
Yeah.
a lot more. Now everybody's joined the race. Nobody can afford not to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and-
But he's talking from an R&D point of view, I guess.
Yeah.
So. And that more of a like foundational research like that has stopped, and that the focus is not on the next architecture, but more on how can we make it bigger and better and
Yeah, I think
distribute it. And
I think on one hand is like, so ChatGPT popularized AI. I think that's a pretty safe statement, right? But I think by popularizing it, are we saying that more people are curious about AI and they're trying to improve it to the next level, like new architectures and really completely different things? Or so that's one. path, right? Like happy path, like everything, like this is everyone's so bought in the idea that this is so popular that we're trying different things.
Mhm.
And on the other hand, we can say, oh, this is where the money is. So all the research papers now are just trying to build a better model to beat a benchmark on maybe, oh, we have a new Dutch transformer model on this benchmark, or now we have one in Portuguese. We can, like I think they can go a bit both ways, and sometimes
At the same time, we've never seen this amount of money, right? In
That's
space.
true.
Like, and like, isn't it also a bit like the question on ROI? From the moment that we see bigger models do not bring extra value, like the focus will probably be more on what is the next architecture.
Efficiency and
Like that
Yeah,
and there is a lot of money to do this now. Huh?
maybe we should have someone that is more like into research to discuss this, because sometimes I have the impression that ROI for research is publishing papers, and the easiest way to publish papers is to say, oh, we have a new state-of-the-art beating this benchmark.
Well, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, it's a big statement on the state of research in AI, right? But sometimes, like,
maybe another deep dive.
yeah.
Voilà.
But in Brazil, for example, I do hear that there's a lot of they reproduce a lot of the stuff they see some other places, because
Yeah.
it's kind of easy, right? Like you see, oh, they have this
Well,
transformer thing.
you need four papers to get your PhD, right?
I guess.
Sorry.
Don't get Bart. We said we're not getting canceled this year.
You're right.
We say these things. Wow.
It's just one more podcast.
Yeah.
We survived that.
Right, like the very end, we almost
Yeah.
made it. But I think I did think this article was published a while ago as well. Let me check the date. 3 months ago. So indeed, I have seen the past month some new things here and there. But I don't know if it's also our perception, because we see a lot of the GPT stuff, and maybe if we were more in the research,
True.
maybe we would see more different things. But
I think the differences between AI product and AI research, I think the focus is a lot on AI products now. While the AI research is getting then, I think, less funding, and that's causing a problem. But in the end, if there are more products, then someone has to do research as well. So maybe it will evaluate in a sense that, okay, someone spent their time on that part as well. No?
But and we still see new things coming out on the current architecture. So yeah, we haven't reached the limits of what we have now, and I do suppose that under the radar, people are still kind of developing the next architecture for when we do reach that limit. Because also all those commercial companies that are now vested in it, they will need that next frontier.
Yeah.
So their R&D teams are also looking into how can we push the limits 6 months from now when we do reach the max of what the current architecture can support.
I think it doesn't make sense to stop the money to the AI research, because I think everything that is developing so quickly now it accelerates everything. Like if you're not quick enough, okay, maybe your algorithm is not gonna. But maybe that's also the problem, that you're not quick enough, and that does bother other people, some people.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to be done, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's always more to be done. So I think to be seen. I'm really curious what's going to be the next really indispensable architecture, right? Like the transform architecture, which is what we see everywhere, like with the GPTs. It's not that new, right? It's pre OpenAI, ChatGPT boom, right? So I'm curious.
There are a lot of companies who are spending like a lot of money with Neuralink, for instance. They're also spending a lot on AI and making sure that we get to the human part as well. So I think there's a lot of things that are going on. Maybe on a bigger scale, maybe smaller companies that were working on got a bit side-drilled by them.
Yeah. And I do think there's also research that is not, like you said, like to productionalize, right? Like you mentioned as well, the Mistral, they have different sizes of models, right? So I think now we have these huge things and we see how capable it is, but also can we make it more accessible for people? There's also research, right? So,
and maybe it's gotten to a point where it's become so business critical at some point that the next research is not going to come from research. It's not going to come from universities.
True.
It's going to come from the R&D labs of big companies.
True.
Who are creating the next architecture or the next new disruption, but keep it commercial.
Yeah. True.
We might have to look at the profile of that person.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
I
he's not.
I just saw that. I was like, well, that's an interesting thought. Maybe I should ask
Maybe it's the
experts.
market or the sector that they're coming from.
Could be. All right, changing gears a bit. Are we all okay if I take a more light topic?
Go for it.
So one thing, another article I came across, I thought it was interesting, is why should you or anyone become an engineer manager? Yeah. So
Is that a light topic?
I'm not sure. It's less. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe I lied, but it is what it is.
So
But
can you repeat? So why would you become an engineering manager?
why should you or anyone become an engineer manager? So I think it's like a lot of the times for engineers, they see the next step as becoming more of a manager, right? Which is less technical, is less like contributing individually. But then you also see a lot of stories, maybe you don't see, right? But that you read people that they were engineers, they were programmers, and then they moved to a more managerial role, and then they kind of regret it because they want to be technical, and then they don't want to do this, they don't want that,
So
etc.
if you say engineering manager, you mean manager of a data team.
It could be, yeah. It doesn't need to be data, but like could be a software team,
Okay.
right? But why? I think the article goes on to say why is it important? The engineer manager, how a good engineer manager will improve the productivity and whatnot. But they also list some other reasons, and I think for me, I'm not an engineer manager necessarily, but I do in my professional progression, I do see a lot of these benefits that they mention here. So one blanket statement is that they say that being a good engineer manager will make you better at life and relationships. So there's a lot of thoughts.
I think you can say that about any profession, right?
Well,
Like
but I think
challenging
it's-
yourself in anything.
But I think it's like because they mentioned engineer manager, so I think this article is targeted towards software engineers. And I think they're saying like, well, if you're an engineer manager, you have to deal with people, and by dealing with people, you
Okay,
get better.
that is the premise, that you have to quote unquote manage people.
I think, yeah,
Yeah.
but that's kind of like they didn't mention this explicitly, but I think that's the undertone, right? Like you're engineer manager, you're dealing with people. So for example, so they drill down a bit, right? So they say self-regulation, right? Like getting frustrated and like regulating yourself,
Yeah.
being aware of these things, being aware that you're being impatient. Being an engineer manager puts you in a position that you have to improve this. Maybe do you agree with these things? Do you think maybe we just go one by one and I'll just ask how?
Okay, let's go.
Yeah?
Which one?
Self-regulation. You think managing people makes you better at regulating yourself?
Versus sitting behind your laptop all day coding, I think yes. I think so if you sit behind your laptop all day coding and you have your tickets assigned, and that is the only thing that you focus on, and then it's very easy to say to be non-constructive and not have any impact on you.
Okay.
You can say fuck this, fuck that, I don't understand why this is not working, I don't agree with this person. You can say all this and it doesn't impact your day-to-day job. From the moment that you are in a position where you quote unquote lead a team or manage a team, or together with a few people needs to achieve a goal, you need to be conscious of these things, that you have an impact on other people.
Yeah.
Right. And you need to have with your team, you need to make sure that you go in a certain direction. And I think that makes it as a completely different perspective that you need to have on self-regulation, for example.
And you felt that? You feel like this is also something you relate to personally, or just like theoretically? Like,
I can understand it personally. Yeah.
okay. I think the second one is like self-awareness, which I think is very much linked, right? Like you gotta realize that you're impatient and this and this. So I think I'll just skip this one. They mentioned understanding other people, which I think to me, I think is more like I understand that people are different. For example, Bart, you're someone that is very direct. Maybe someone is not so direct, right? So the way that I'm gonna relate to you, I think that's I can relate to understanding other people in this sense. That people have different profiles, and I don't want to come across too strong to you, maybe Kevin, if you're not as direct as Bart. But some people can just be very direct, and they'll get the message, and they won't be offended. Is this something?
But I think with same goes for the previous points. I agree, and I think it's quite logical in a sense, but not by default. It's not the fact that you become a manager that by default you're going to be attentive to this person has a different communication style than I do, and so how do I adapt my communication to be more effective in kind of herding the group in a certain direction, it's a good manager will gain those lessons and will kind of see those things, but it's not a given because you're a manager that suddenly you see those things. You need to be open-minded and willing to discover and willing to see those things, because you can just as well, like you said, Bart, when you said, as a coder and then you're grumpy and you're making comments about stuff, you can very well just become a manager and keep doing the same.
That's right.
And you're just gonna spiral down the motivation of the team, because now you do have that influence. So it's not by definition becoming a manager that will give you those benefits. It's
like
stepping into a manager role with the right mindset, kind of being in there and like, I want to learn how this works and I'm going to do it to the fullest. Then absolutely, I think you can learn.
But then it's like,
but maybe also because you are then in a position that you're a manager, you're also in a environment that allows you to really grow in this and to see like I grow in it and immediately see the effects of that as well. It's like
you're put in a position in which you can learn these things. Like you're in a, like you're put through the experiences that can make you better if you're willing.
Yes.
But now, just my, so because now we are saying, okay, you get put into the situation where you can learn those things. But do we really think like a data engineer or software engineer are not putting on those situations?
No, it's not as extreme as that. I was giving an example.
It's like...
but I think like if we look at Dataroots, people that work as a data engineer, they are consultants.
Yeah.
They're in a different position. If you're within a company, if you're one of the thousands of data engineers on Facebook, then you're part of a very small team where you have very clear assignment, like this is what you work on, then you can be less conscious of these things and not having it impact you.
But then if you're in that position, then the step that you take to become a manager is quite high, quite big. And I think it's becoming a manager, the step is never that high. You are learning it step by step, and then at some point, you are like, okay, now I can be that person.
But they're gonna give you that confidence if you already demonstrate it in another way. So during the stand-ups, you're already kind of listening more to people, and you have that attitude or kind of showing interest in more that side of the job as well. If you clearly demonstrate that you're not interested in it, then likely you're not going to be granted a chance to.
So it's not that if you were an engineer and suddenly now you became a manager, you have all the test stuff. Either you build it up and then you developed, or how do you say it? You became a manager in that.
But I still feel like once you're put in that role, like there's a change. Like you can feel it more. Like it becomes, I think is what you're saying, or you said, Kevin, that this becomes a central part of your role. To do a good job, you're centered around these things. Whereas like if you're an engineer that takes the lead on this, I feel like your job doesn't really depend on this. Like it's more of a added like an extra thing, right? People are paying you to do programming, to program whatever, right? But I feel like as soon as you become a manager, then your main bread and butter becomes on how you relate to people, how you can understand them better, et cetera, right? So I think there's a shift there still. Maybe another setting good boundaries. I think that one's maybe a more debatable one. Do you feel like managers, they're better at setting boundaries than
it needs to happen in every role?
I think so too, right? But do you feel like do you think you're exposed more?
You get probably exposed to more people asking questions.
Yeah, and you have to say like, no, not gonna answer this now. Spend my time or something. You feel like this happens more as a manager than a...
I think you're just simply more exposed to these questions. You need to be, maybe because of that, be more aware of it.
But what you see a lot with young managers is they try to kind of imagine you're working on something, and as an individual developer, you're working on your part of the task, and it might be a bit behind schedule. A lot of managers feel it as their personal responsibility to make sure that the total gets done, and so they will complement for where some of the people fall back. But if you do that left, right, left, left, right, then suddenly where the team kind of goes through cycles, you just keep a flat line at the top of that cycle because you're complementing for the drops in that cycle for everybody else, and so it's difficult at some point to say, now my thing goes down, my contribution goes down, and then the risk is that the product or the release or the thing that my team is responsible for won't be there. I think that's the you feel personally liable
Good
for
point, yeah. Good point.
Yeah,
the result.
yeah, I agree. Sensitivity to power dynamics. I think that what they're mentioning here is like, because you're in a leadership role, you're sensitive that asking someone to do something, they may see this as not a kind request, but something that they need to do.
Okay, yeah.
I saw it more as being
So
being exposed also to politics. And
exactly.
No, I think that's what they meant. I need
Okay.
to haven't reread the article in the past days, but it's like if you are like leading the team and you say, "Hey, can you what do you think of this?" They may feel pressure to say, "Oh, I like it," because you're the boss.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is
That depends on your team.
think
No? It depends on who you're in your
yeah,
team
Maryam,
is.
for example, she's gonna say
No.
Kevin no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think it depends also. Like if let's say Murillo becomes a team lead tomorrow, the colleagues from his team that he already knows, like say, "Oh, cool, Murillo got a promotion." The day after, someone new joins his team. To that person that is new, that didn't know Murillo before,
Yeah.
Murillo will be his boss.
Yeah, that's true.
And it also depends on your manager whether he or she has a open ear. Like if you know,
True,
okay,
yeah.
he's not gonna listen, or he is just asking to ask,
Yeah.
then no one will mention. But if you know, okay, he does something with your contribution,
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of two-way role.
Hmm.
It depends on your manager, but also on your employees a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think the last two here are hard conversations and the art of being on the same side, which I think it's kind of not necessarily related. I think hard conversations, I think it's easy to see why.
Mhm.
But I think this is also a good example from my personal experience as well, how having to do this on my job, because I do know this is part of the job, right? And I think it made it easier, or gave some experience to deal in personal life as well, right? Like some things need to be addressed, etc., etc. The art of being on the same side, it's more on if you disagree with someone. I think it's to know how you can navigate this conversation in a way that you can make it clear that you're on the same side, right? Like you're on the same team. Like we disagree on how to do it, but we all want the same thing, which is also useful in personal relationships as well. Like a lot of the times, it's not like you're 180
No.
against each other. It's more like you have different ways of looking at it, and it's fine.
And you're
Right.
looking for common ground.
Exactly. Right.
To me, a lot of these things come down a bit to empathy, like trying to understand and be open to why people want to do something, what drives them, what motivates people, and why don't they agree. Like try to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
I agree. I think it's people, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of it. Maybe one thing that they mentioned, I think, work is kind of the ideal sandbox for practicing life skills because social contract is more explicit. And I thought it was also an interesting, I kind of agree. It was an interesting way to put it, but it's just kind of like your work, it's work, right? Like if I'm telling you this, that you're not doing a good job, it's not because I'm a jerk. It's just because as a company, we have certain standards, and it's not me personally saying this to you. It's more like it's work. You shouldn't take it personally, right? And what they're trying to say here is that work creates this environment where you don't have to say things personally. And you expect the person to take things personally as well. And that's what they mean by the social contract being more explicit. Do you agree with this? Do you think work is do you see a difference? Maybe like if you're at work, do you have an easier time having hard conversations than in personal life, or setting boundaries, or giving feedback, or something like this? Or because they did mention as well, like you can be your professional self at work. So it's almost like it's not Murillo.
That's true, I think.
Is Murillo the tech lead? So maybe he's a jerk, but that's fine. That's not Murillo,
I agree and I don't agree. I think there's has my professional communication taught me things that I can apply at home? Absolutely. Without a doubt. But the label or the mask you can put on at home, you cannot always put on in private situations. So you don't always have the same kind of, like you say. So the contract part, as between two people at work, there's usually kind of a you do this and you do that, and so there's a role distribution, and so this is what is expected of that role. If you're among friends, you don't necessarily have that kind of label. So if you need to have a difficult conversation with somebody, it's not out of title that you can have that conversation. You need to have it genuinely, and it's still a very different approach to having that difficult conversation than it would be under the umbrella of a specific title or a role that you take up at that point.
Yeah, it's hard to say it's not personal. In your personal life.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
But I really like what Kevin said, because in the end, it's like you are still working with people. You can't ignore that part. You can't be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to be very professional and say I don't like you, but because you're still working with people,
Exactly.
and you have to take that into account. And also we have to see how much, like, we work 8 hours per day. That's a big third part of your day. So you can't say work is work, because work is not just work. I see sometimes more people on my job than I see my friends, I see my family.
True.
So you can't just say work is work.
Yeah,
For
I see what
me,
you're
I
saying.
think, for me, like, when I chose a job, for me, people is like the most important thing that I look for a job. If I can't match with people, I don't want to work there. So I don't know.
I agree. I think this is it's not a hard line. But yeah, I think you are put in different positions, right? Like, I think work kind of forces you to put in certain circumstances that maybe you wouldn't have to in your personal life, but comes in handy. That's it. I think we don't have any more time. I think some people, Bart has a hard stop at 6, but maybe we have 7 minutes. Do you think we have time to play quote or no quote?
Go for it.
Hit it. So I was the big winner last time. So this morning I prepped up. This is, I hope we're all familiar with this.
Maybe explain it.
So yeah, maybe it's a good idea. Thank Bart for keeping me honest. Do you know quote no quote?
Don't
Quote
put
or
her
not
under
quote?
pressure. Don't put her under
No, but I'm
pressure.
gonna explain anyways. I'm just
This is like a question like, did you listen to the previous episode?
So here's the scenario. We have GPT related model. We asked it to generate 2 fake quotes, and we have 1 real quote, and then we try to guess. So it's almost like a Turing test. Is it Turing test, right?
So
We're trying to. It's almost like that, but with NLP, ChatGPT, or whatever
Mistral.
LM, Mistral, generated quotes. Who I chose for this week is actually Rick from Rick and Morty.
Oh,
yeah. So we're all familiar with Rick and Morty.
No.
Okay, so
that's a difficult one.
it's a cartoon.
Okay.
It's fine. You can still play, but maybe it won't be. Anyways, we'll see. So here's the first quote. I don't like your unemployed genes in my grandchildren, Jerry, but life is made of little concessions.
Could be real.
That's the first quote. Second quote. Morty, in the great scheme of things, we're just specks of dust arguing on a cosmic scale. That's number 2.
Think that is real.
Number 3. Weddings are basically funerals with cake. That's number 3. So we have 1 real quote and we have 2 fake quotes.
I've heard the third one before.
You've heard the third one before, but you didn't know who Rick was. How did you?
I know.
She's like, I just know stuff.
I think I've heard the third one, and
All
I
right,
really liked it.
Then you get the first pick. What do you think? Which quote you think is the real quote?
I think the third.
No, sorry, the fake.
No,
the fake quote.
There are 2 fakes, no?
No. There's 2 real ones.
2 reals, 1 fake.
Okay. I would say, wait, the second one, it was hard to read for you.
I'll read it again.
Yeah.
2 fake, 1 real. Number 1, I don't like your unemployed genes in my grandchildren, Jerry, but life is made of little concessions. Second one, Morty, in the great scheme of things, we're just specks of dust arguing on a cosmic scale.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, weddings are basically funerals with cake.
I want to say the first and the third are the real.
So you're picking 2 as the fake one.
No, so the second is the fake one.
Second is the fake one. All right. Bart seems a bit troubled, so I'll go for Kevin.
I'll say the first is the fake one. Just
You're playing the spread.
Yeah.
I think the third one is too politically correct.
I think the third one is too politically correct.
Yeah.
Bart, you are Incorrect. Wah, wah. You have that? Sorry. Maryam, you chose Morty. In the great scheme of things, we're just specks of dust arguing on a cosmic scale. And you are correct.
Oh.
There you go, which makes you, Kevin, incorrect as well. Sorry about that. Yeah,
Hey, that's two times down.
I'm not sure still how it fits, but that means, Maryam, you're the big winner of quote
Yes.
unquote. So
Right.
maybe
First time at podcast and first time.
there we go.
Oh.
Yeah, so that means the next time you can bring the quote.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yes. So you have to pick a person. 2 real quotes, 1 fake quote. I think it's a bit. You can, if you want to mix it up, I think that's also fine. But and I think that's it. We gotta call it a pod. Anyone have any other thoughts?
We're gonna do the last Kevin.
Aha.
La plataforma.
La plateforme.
Oh my god.
Make it a bit lower and a bit slower.
La plateforme.
Wow. And on that note, have a Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yes, that's true. I'll see you on 2024. In 2024, actually, but we'll have an episode as part 2 of the RootsCon.
Yes, next week, but
Next
it's
week.
pre-recorded.
But yes, but we'll see each other live in 2024. Cool. Thanks, y'all.
everybody for being here.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks for
next
whoever
time.
is on the live stream still.